So let me just bring up the email that we got about the clearing the paths at Emerson Field, because I know Kate is here and had some info about it, and you've got to step away in just a couple of minutes. So I sent you that long series of messages that kind of went back and forth between people in the town and Francis. And I think they weren't happy. Francis was not happy about the outcome. But Kate, do you want to fill us in on where the town stands in terms of this?
Sure, thank you. So the exchange with Francis began quite a while before it was then forwarded to the Disability Commission. So just as some background, the individual wrote to somebody on the Highway and Grounds crew, Aaron McCloskey, and said that they understood that the ADA paths were being installed as part of the Emerson Park project, which is true, and then asked that they be cleared for during the winter months or after a storm, and then made a somewhat threatening comment about, and by the way, if they're not, I'll be forced to take legal action, which was an interesting way to start off a conversation. So the director of Highway and Grounds, to his credit, wrote back and said, we don't historically say that we can take care of all of the pathways in parks. We do that on a time and materials basis, and said, is there something specific that you are trying to be able to get to during the winter months that you can't, or is there a particular barrier? Perhaps we could meet on site and you could bring us through it. And the individual wrote back to that a couple of days later and copied Stephen Crane, town manager, stating that they would not like to meet, and that the pathways just needs to be cleared, or they would be taking legal action. And so at that point, Aaron forwarded that exchange to Alan Cathcart, who is the director of Public Works. And he called me and said, geez, this seems a little bit more than what I've had to deal with in the past. Usually we try to enter into a dialogue with people and understand that. Is there any way that you could help me out? Which I was happy to do. So I picked up the thread there. And I think you all have seen a majority of that email where I quote a piece of the statute and talked about that, it wasn't necessarily under my purview to say what sidewalks within parks we're clearing or not clearing, but really that's determined by the amount of snow we get. And on the telephone with Jean the other day, I gave the example, if in October it starts to snow and it's snowing heavily, then we are preparing for a long and relatively expensive snow and ice season. If in fact we can get into the middle of December and we've only had light dustings, it allows more time for overtime, more time for material, salt, sand, etc. And often we can do more with that. But it really is up to what nature sort of throws at us and throws in our way. And that would have been something that we would have attempted to explain to the individual should he or she have wanted to have any type of dialogue with us. So I wrote back stating about the time and materials. I quoted the statute and then said, of course, just so you know, if your concern is that you wanted to access a particular event or something that was happening within the park, of course, we would make sure that all of the areas that we're programming are accessible. But there are no restrooms that are there during the winter season. And my understanding from a previous email exchange was that the person wanted to use the park as a cut through from Stowe Street to Thoreau Street. And so I said, of course, the town needs to make reasonable accommodations. However, the pathway that you're defining is actually 0.02 longer than if you were to just use Everett Street because of the way that the path meanders through the center of the park. And so I talked about that in my email. And then I think that you saw the email back. I fully admit that I referred to Francis as Mr., and I explained that in a way that it was not meant to be offensive, but in going back through, that was something that I assumed, probably maybe wrongly, but I thought that that was a better decision than to use someone's first name. And I kind of gave a little bit of information as to why that is. You know, again, I think we're all trying to navigate this. We're certainly not looking for a fight. One of the things that I did tell Jean on our phone conversation is that I think in error, although I can't be sure, I and the DPW director were forwarded an exchange between Francis, the city of Boston, and the Boston Red Sox, where Francis is also alleging a number of barriers that are there. Similar context, similar threats, and using the AD's office as, you know, kind of saying that they are involved with the AD's office. So I made a phone call over there. That doesn't appear to be true. The email that came to me on Francis's behalf from another civic group is a group that, at least through a simple Google search, I am no detective, but looks for cases that people feel wronged, and for a nominal fee, try to settle those with towns out of court, and then they take a certain portion of that. So I'm certainly not saying that there's any type of devious intent here, but you know, Francis's refusal to have any type of conversation with us, you know, has been troubling. And so I sent a letter to that group asking for the person that's in charge of their litigation and their board of directors, so that we could ensure that we were in fact communicating with an actual group, and that I would send that on to the AG's office. And I haven't received a response from that. I called the phone number that was on there and it was disconnected. So all of that is about the Francis individual, but separate from that is the fact that we are and take very seriously the ability for people to access all of the parks and playgrounds and open spaces and conservation areas. However, the expense of doing that has to be weighed after we take care of roadways, of crosswalks, and of the more mainstream downtown areas, and then places where people get public transportation. That was very long. I'm very sorry for this.
Okay.
For the length of
Well,
it.
and also I'm taking notes and I didn't get it all. So I'm going to ask you, Kate, if you would summarize it and send it to me.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
There's also the other piece. Hang on, Meryl, just 1 second. There's also that's sort of buried in the middle of the very long 2.5 page email, or two-page email that Francis sent to Disability Committee and CC'd Terry, that Terry then forwarded to us, or to me, about a concern that the materials being used are not meeting the existing material and thickness, and kind of went into some description of that. And I'm not sure where the town sort of stands on that, using asphalt versus concrete. Certainly asphalt is less expensive. We just did our accessible walkway here at Minuteman and used asphalt for that.
Yeah. So we are using asphalt. We're not using concrete. Part of it is expense, and part of it is that concrete historically does not hold up as well in our harsh winters, including when it's surrounded on both sides by what's parkland and often has standing water that's sitting on it, and the drainage on Emerson is not great. So you get a lot of frost heaves. So it is the exact same material that we were talking about using over at White Pond. It's fully accessible. It is regulated by, by the state. It meets code, it meets ADA code, it meets accessibility and architectural access board code. And as does concrete. But again, the decision was for ongoing maintenance and cost.
Mhm. Okay, and then the individual also made some comments about overhearing a town employee make a comment about somebody whining about having the snow removed. That, in my book, sounds a little like hearsay. You know,
Right, so that project was bid out. There's a contractor that's there. There are a couple of members of the Highway and Grounds Division that are there very sporadically, certainly not on any regular occurrence other than to check in. The project is not particularly difficult, to be honest. It's a pretty straightforward project. Given that it's already parkland and we're talking about walkways through an area that's already well established and increases for the betterment of the well system and the irrigation system. So, you know, I have to say that I find it hard to believe because I think that we have a pretty respectful workforce. That said, people talk all the time. I'm sure that they say all types of things about all types of people, including, you know, things about whomever it is, and we can't necessarily control that. I did send that to Alan Cathcart just to make him aware. He talked to the project managers and said, you know, look, I don't know how somebody would overhear this. It's interesting to me because the only way that I think someone would be able to hear that is if they went into the construction area beyond the fence where they're not supposed to be. So I'm not saying that that makes it okay to say or do things that are offensive, but again, it just further makes it not necessarily credible to me, but I certainly can't be sure of that.
okay, thank you, Kate. I appreciate you hopping on. I know you've got a busy evening.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have this, and then I have actually have to go to the personnel board. But are there any other questions about this? And I will certainly summarize it and can send it in memo form to the.
Thank you. Meryl, you had a question.
I just wanted to thank Kate for fielding this very difficult situation. And there are certain people who have a need to create a disturbance around themselves. And unfortunately, elected officials and town government is really the brunt of it. And I really I'm grateful that you're persisting through this in a very professional way.
I appreciate you saying that. You know, this person is not the first, nor will I think that they will be the last. And, you know, certainly when and if he or she decides that they do want to engage in a dialogue, I'd be happy to do that because we certainly want people to feel heard. But lots of people just need a place to vent, and that's okay too.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah. So we have a quorum now, yay.
I
I do-
apologize for my tardiness.
Yeah.
My
That's
computer
okay.
decided at 10 minutes to 5 it had to update.
Oh,
And then I'm on my husband, I'm listed as Tom Bates because I'm on my husband's computer, but my apologies. But I'm here.
that's great. That's great. So we can actually start the official meeting. I'm going to suggest, if it's okay with you, let's approve the minutes, and then I'd like to move things around a little on the agenda. We have Justin Richardson here to talk with us a little bit about the Commonwealth Avenue improvements. And so I'd like to move that up on the agenda, and then also the library and umbrella arts parking. So, because I see Ned Perry here, and he's the person who alerted me to the concern about the library and potential for parking changes. So, minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes that Mary Beth did? Thank you, Mary Beth. You're not here, but we thank you for your time. And Janet for being the reviewer. Any comments, any changes to the minutes?
Sorry, Gina, are we approving June as well as July right now?
We are approving July.
Okay.
Oh, you're right, we didn't approve June. I'm sorry, I lost track.
Yeah,
of
we
that.
haven't reproved June.
Right.
Because what we
Okay.
got with the,
Sorry, I lost track of that. So I don't have the June minutes in front of me, but if you all, if someone wants to move to accept those minutes, if you recall reading them.
Accept the minutes for June.
what they are though, the minutes for June haven't gone out. What went out with the draft was a draft.
Hmm.
So what went out was a draft with my corrections to the minutes that were sent out. So what we need is for me to go back and see if I can find what I sent to the person who was taking those minutes. I've forgotten who that was. And send those to Jean and we can approve them. I don't think you'll have any problem with them. All I did was correct grammar and structure and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I didn't
Okay.
change anything meaningful. So I
Okay.
think you can approve them.
So the email that we got on July 8th was not,
They weren't the
Final,
minutes
'cause
you
it
were
says
supposed,
it says
they weren't the minutes
revised.
you were supposed to have gotten. They were what that was my corrections or my editorial remarks about the minutes that were done. And so they went out unfinished. And we need to get those back, I guess. And then I can redo them. I'll go through. Who did those? Who was the person who was doing those minutes? I've forgotten who that was. But anyway, I can take those minutes.
I think that was Karen.
Yeah, okay. Karen Young?
I think
It
so.
wasn't Karen Young, because I've never had to change anything in hers. This was the
Oh.
person after her who did them for a few months.
Oh, Lauren
Yeah.
Beretta.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay. So we need to get my minutes to her, which is what you sent out. And you send them to me and I'll take out
Okay.
everything that's my editorial comments and send them out again.
all right.
I'll change my motion. I motion to approve the July minutes.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
Okay,
Second,
good,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, and we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
So Susan, can I ask you a point of rule of meetings? I know we were doing roll calls for every vote. But now that meetings are being recorded, do we need to continue to do that?
Yes, it's because we're not all in the same room. If we were all together physically, we could do
Okay,
but because we're Zooming, we need to roll call.
all right. Janet, would you call on people for their vote? You're muted, Janet.
to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's see. Bonnie? Who do we, who are the
Yes.
regular? Yes, Merrill,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes,
Justin's not a member, and Jean.
Yes.
And that's it, right?
Nope,
Yourself.
don't forget yourself.
And me, okay.
All right, great, thank
Okay.
you. All right, let's move on to the Commonwealth Avenue improvements.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, Justin, thank you for
I'm gonna try to
coming.
share my screen here so that everyone can see it. Let's hope it works, because it never does. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes,
Okay, great. So once again, thank you for having me here. Wanted to introduce our Commonwealth Avenue Complete Streets project. I am presenting. Steve Duprin obviously has approved this presentation, but is not able to join us tonight. It'll just be me. Our Commonwealth Ave project for Complete Streets is basically from Losbrook Ave to Church Street here.
I have to interrupt for a second.
Sure.
Thanks. I can't get my minutes and you on the same, I can't get my my Microsoft Word document and you on the same, when you're taking up the screen. Does anybody know what I can do to divide my screen and get my minutes?
I think you can click escape. That might take you out of the full screen mode that automatically happens when people share.
Click escape? Where's that?
Usually it's the top left of your keyboard.
Oh yeah, you got it. Exactly. Okay, thanks. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the section, as you can see, is referenced in green here along Commonwealth Ave. The majority of the work is taking place between Beth Harrell and Beth Harrell Street. It kind of loops around over here. So you'll see once we get further into the presentation. So just a little background on the project. I know everyone's.
Justin, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. Can you please
Sure.
go back to the map and just orient me to that space? Because you probably look
Yep.
at this all the time, but I'm trying to
Yep.
get my bearings here from the
Sure,
top.
this is Losbrook Street right here. The intersection here, and this is Church Street, and this is the MBTA parking lot right here.
Great, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it might help if you point out maybe Neshoba Brook Bakery there.
I know Tea Cakes is right here. I believe sorry. First of all, I'm going to say I'm not super familiar with all the businesses along this.
Oh, sorry, Neshoba Brook, just for people's, reference, it's the largest building with a dark roof in the upper part of the screen. Yes,
So right.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that help, Bonnie? Okay.
Can I ask, right off the bat, I'd like to know why the green doesn't extend to the triangle on the upper left, which is Losbrook Road. Commonwealth veers off to the right and Losbrook. Does the project include the going straight down to that triangle or beyond?
So you'll see a little further down once we have, I have a slide that shows the plan.
Okay.
So we can go into it, but basically the improvements are in this area right here, in front of the businesses. However, as part of our roads program, we do plan to pave from this area down, but the major, complete streets portion of the work is located in this area. So.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll try to make this quick. The project background, basically, the town adopted the complete streets policy in July 30th, 2018 to enhance multimodal transportation planning. 2019, the Public Works developed a prioritization plan, which is basically our list of priorities for this complete streets project. And in February of 2020, the town received a signed agreement for a tier 3 complete streets construction funding from MassDOT for this. And then obviously due to COVID-19, we've had to request an extension from MassDOT just because obviously the town had sort of shut down a little bit, and then a lot of construction companies have closed down, so we were unable to meet in the time period. So we were granted the extension till September 30th, 2022 for us to use this money from MassDOT. And In January 2021, the town executed a contract with TEC, who's the design engineer of this project. And then on April 21st, TEC prepared a conceptual plan. We brought the conceptual plan to the West Concord Advisory Committee, and they had some recommendations for us. So we updated the plan based on that. And then we presented the plan to the town traffic advisory committee, and it was approved basically to move forward for bidding documents. So project objectives to improve multimodal transportation West Concord. Obviously something you guys are going to be concerned with, the ADA compliant sidewalks along Commonwealth Ave. Currently now the slopes on both sidewalks are too steep to meet ADA compliance. We also plan to improve pedestrian safety by installing higher curbs, bump outs at crosswalks for visibility and improving crosswalk safety. We improve the delineation of Commonwealth Ave. And we're trying to improve the accommodations for bike traffic, and then apply traffic calming measures with pavement markings. So that being said, this is the plan I was referencing before. So this is going to be the improvement to this section between Bethel and Bethel, essentially. What we're going to do is rebuild all the sidewalks along Commonwealth Ave, and we're going to realign the crosswalks to make them safer, and we're going to include bump outs, these things, so that people can see past the parked cars when entering the street. Essentially, we originally, there was a plan to do bump outs on both sides. However, it hindered truck turning movements on both out of Bradford Street and Bethel Street. So we were only able to make it work on one side of the roadway for a bump out. But aligning the crosswalks to make them more straight with these bump outs as well makes it a lot safer, because there's less time that pedestrians are in the crosswalk. So we are going to maintain the existing handicap parking spaces. There's an existing one located right here. I don't know if everyone can see my cursor. There's an existing one here that was immediately adjacent to the crosswalk before. However, since we're moving the crosswalk, we're going to relocate that handicap space to be adjacent to the crosswalk again. We also are in talks with TEC related to potentially having this handicap parking space move to this area, which would provide an easier transition into the crosswalk, because this bump out may make it a little difficult. So there's specific requirements related to that. So the handicap parking space needs to be 20 feet from the crosswalk. So we're trying to have TEC move this crosswalk over to be located more in this location, and see if the actual space fits. They're working on that right now. So if the only difference that you may see to the full design plans is if we can get the handicap space to be on this side. We believe that that's a better location for it. So then you have handicap parking on both sides of the street, so north and south, and obviously up against the crosswalk, so it's very accessible. And basically we're restriping the whole area, putting share the street bike symbols, and then redoing all the ramps along the entire roadway, so that it is completely accessible from basically the train tracks all the way through to Bethel Street. So I figure I'll stop here just in case, because it's easier to have questions now while we're on the plans. and then we can go forward from there.
Justin, I have a question and a comment for you about this. By the way, thank you for the work you've done here. I like how you've straightened these and made them shorter, and allowed, people to be able to see beyond the cars, that bump, like you're saying. But I have a question. I'm very familiar with the area, and where the handicap parking is on this map is kind of far from the action. So it seems like it should be right in front of Deborah's, because people need to grocery shop, they need to get food. So, I mean, that's one of my main concerns, is how can people get access to, basic necessities. So where you've put or where it currently is and where it is in this diagram is quite far away from the actual necessities of life. So that would be my comment on this map, but thank you.
So I think Deborah's is this building right here.
Yes.
Yes.
And to the left now too? Oh, no. Yep. It's expanding, so I'm not exactly sure how much it's
Yeah.
taking.
Yeah, I know it is expanding. I'm not sure the extent of that myself either. So we tried to match the current handicap spaces because, so obviously the easiest access point would be from this space here, the shortest distance. We tried to match what was existing, and that was a request basically from the West Concord Advisory Committee as far as Crosswalks location too. So we tried to tie the handicaps parking spaces with the locations of the crosswalks, just so that it's easy, for someone to cross the street and they don't need to go down a sidewalk to get to the access point. So that was our thinking related to that. I do understand the concern. Another issue was that the second existing handicap parking space was right here, which there was right up against this is just a regular curb. There's no access point. So it was a little difficult to carry a curb the whole way and then find places to put the handicap parking space. So that's essentially why we placed them where they were. So.
I have a question about the parking spaces. If you are able to move the one that's, I'll say closest to Concord Tea Cakes or closest to the railroad tracks to the opposite side of the street, that then adds a regular parking space in that spot. If you do that, would it be possible to add another handicap spot that's down closer to Deborah's, maybe right before the other crosswalk?
So you're still going to have a similar situation where the bump out is going to force the person out into the street, which is what we're kind of trying to avoid. And then there's a curb along the edge. So I wish it was an easier scenario, but to get a ramp there that's accessible, it would be almost impossible with the current configuration of the sidewalk. And then another thing we're dealing with along this is all the building accesses. So Deborah's, has a step there that we're trying to match existing grade. So it's, some of the buildings do have ramps to get in, but a lot of them, the access there is a step. So, we're trying to do best we can with the situation.
So I know that Deborah's has an accessible entrance at the rear. It's not ideal. I mean, overall, Deborah's is hard to maneuver in no matter what. but I don't know if there's a handicap parking spot in that rear parking area.
I
Do any
believe
of
there's
you-
one right here, because I think I can see the symbol.
I,
Right.
I know there is because I've used it. There is one right where his arrow was. So you can, but that means that you really, you can access the rest of Commonwealth, but you can't enter Deborah's from the front. You have to still use the space that's right at the back entrance of Deborah's, which is really problematic depending on what they have and whether they've cleared the path inside the store, which is hard. And I don't know what they're building for the second, which is a whole other issue, but for the second building that they're renovating, that used to be the West Concord 5 and 10, I'm wondering whether there's going to be additional HP parking available, because that's really the issue, that you don't have just one building for Deborah's, you have two. And because it's a renovation, they've got to provide more HP parking. So I don't know where that stands. So that hasn't been addressed by this plan, right?
Right. Meryl, I made a note to get in touch with Deborah and invite her to one of our meetings.
Uh-huh.
I think that it'd be great to have her come.
Right, that'd be great. Mhm. But
Okay.
this plan that's being discussed right now
Mhm.
doesn't take into account the additional need for more street parking in front of Deborah's, which is the only, somewhat problematic issue. I see that it's really going to be a problem because the HP spot is across the street, and it really, someone who is attempting to do shopping at this new building is going to have a big problem in crossing the street with a grocery bag. And, in anticipation of that, I should think that we should really rethink the possibility of I think, Jean, you're right, putting an additional space closer to Deborah's, because the whole landscape is changing. We're working with a different scenario now. That's just my feeling that,
Yeah.
it's, this is the old West Concord, but we're going to have, I have dealt with the Concord 5 and 10 for years, and it was not an accessible building. But I would, try to find a space on that side of the street, because I really don't like having to cross the street with a walker. I felt it was, no matter what I did, it didn't feel safe. So the real question is, in light of the change of building usage, can you possibly, find a space, to accommodate another HP spot closer to Deborah's?
So essentially the issue is the access from the from the space.
Yes.
So finding a safe, I don't, you know, being an engineer, I wouldn't want to propose a space that, you know, is going to force someone into a situation that's going to be even more dangerous than having to cross a street in a designated crosswalk area. So
Right.
my concern is that because this whole area is curved and there's no real way to get a ramp in there, because you'd have to essentially lower in front of each one of these building faces, which we're already struggling to meet the elevations of the doorways and stuff like that along, and still make it compliant. That, you know, the main reason we wanted to move this space is because essentially it would force someone out into the street to get into the accessible lane. And that's a similar case here, as if we made this one a handicap space, this would force someone out because of the bump out into the street before they were able to get into the walk, which is not ideal for you know, for that. I believe it's a more unsafe situation.
What if you designated, it's not quite as close to Deborah's, but it would be considerably closer. So there are 3 parking spots closer to the Lawsbrook Road end. If you designated the one that's closest to Deborah's as a handicap spot.
You know, I was thinking the same thing in front of the upholstery store. Because
Yes.
that's really, that's
Right.
like the super spot for Deborah's right there. It's less busy, it's less chaotic to get in and out. It's
Mhm.
got that whole street right next to it, so it's more open.
So is that further this way?
Yes. No,
No,
it's in
right
the,
there.
it's in the drawing. Just move your arrow up. Oh, no.
Right
Yeah,
there.
see those
Yes.
3?
Back
Go over to.
back one. Yeah,
Go
back
back
two.
to.
Here?
That one.
Yes.
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 I think once again, so this ramp right here, this driveway into Deborah's,
Yes.
I don't know the grading on that. We'd have, if that would comply as a ramp or not, that we'd have to take a look at. And then, you know, another thing we'll have to deal with too is we're already losing 1 parking space due to this development. And the businesses along the street are already not happy related to that. So if we take one of the regularly used parking spaces, that might not be something they want to do.
Justin, but if you're adding a spot that people can use, it's just a spot. It's not like you're taking away a parking spot. You're actually adding usefulness to people. You know, it's not like a competition. It's just all people trying to park.
Yeah, no, I realize that. I just don't know. I mean, I know how the businesses are going to view it. And it's going to be like, essentially, if you're taking a spot away, not really, but kind of.
So that kind of thinking is really a very ableist kind of thinking, that businesses really should recognize the economic power of people with disabilities. If the business is accessible, it's easy to get to, it's friendly to people with disabilities, then they will use it. And
I'm
businesses-
not disagreeing. I'm just telling you, like, engineering is gonna be stuck between a rock and a hard place, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm trying, we want to make everyone happy. We want the project to progress, so it's, we're, like I said.
Justin, what if you
Stuck.
drop that one that's over by the railroad station? What if you traded out that spot so that that would be gained back.
So you would prefer that this space be HC as opposed to this one?
I can't speak for the whole
Yes.
group, but maybe Meryl can talk, or other people who use the spots more. But it just feels so far away, that spot near the railroad track. It feels like it's just, way out by Pluto. So,
I would have no issue. That would be an easy trade for me. Then, it's, we're keeping the same amount of spaces. This space, if it's far away, then, that's fine to be just a regular space. It already is just a regular space. So then, maybe the West Concord Advisory Committee wouldn't have any issue with it changing. So I think that would be if we can get the grading to work here, and I'll have to talk with our designers, because I'm not sure what this slope is here. So essentially this would be the ramp onto the sidewalk.
Mhm.
If that works, I don't foresee that being an issue.
So that would make a lot of sense. And I think that area that's closer to the railroad tracks, an ambulatory person would feel like, oh, this is a great spot that I only have to walk a few feet to get to the stores, versus someone who's using wheels, and it's a bigger issue.
Sure. I mean, like I think that's a great solution.
I think that makes sense to me.
Okay, good. Other questions, anyone? Well, Justin, thank you very much for coming tonight and for your presentation, and for, being open and willing to discuss and listening to people's input.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I'm trying to make everyone happy here.
Yeah, I'm sure it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, thank you for having me. If you have any other questions, I had some more. Just wanted to bring up one more thing. We are going to be improving basically the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee had heard from you that that there was an issue here related to the ramp going to the bridge. So we
Yes.
now have a plan in hand through Marcia that we are going to build a ramp here. So, that I know it's not exactly in that area, but it's close.
Mhm.
The ramp will be basically either paid for through this project, like bid with the Commonwealth Ave Complete Streets project, or another one that we have this year to try to expedite it. So you guys can, expect that. So,
Terrific. Thank you.
yep, no problem.
Justin, I'm
Like I
sorry.
said, if you have any
Um,
questions,
I
here's
have
all.
another quick question about connectivity from that area.
Sure.
From here, so maybe I can email you and ask you that question then?
Yeah, you can. So it's not really engineering mostly deals with roadways, not so much paths and stuff like that. So that's more of a planning. Again, I don't want to speak for Marcia. So but yes, if you email me your question, I will distribute it to probably Marcia and see where it goes from there. So
Also, Bonnie, if you CC'd me, or Steve Crane, it might be a transportation commission committee meeting issue. Because if you're talking about access and connectivity, it's sort of a bigger picture item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you guys.
thanks a lot.
Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so it's 6:02. I don't think we're going to get through our entire agenda tonight. I would like to update people about what conversations I've had about library parking and parking for the umbrella. And Ned, if you're still with us, you're welcome to join in on the conversation. So Ned sent me some info about the library parking. As you know, was it a yellow leaf tree? I'm sorry, the very
Yeah.
treasured tree by the library lost a limb that hit the children's wing in one of the storms. And when they cleaned that up, they realized that the core of the tree had a lot of rot, so they had to take down the tree, which meant potentially some of the other designs that they had for on-site parking that they eliminated because they were worried about the impact on that tree could be open for discussion. So I called Sherry Litbeck to talk with her about it. And it took her a couple of days. She was away, but she got back to me and said, well, I don't know if the library would be willing to reopen the conversation about parking, but she was going to talk with, I think it was Mario, about it. I also called Jeff Adams, who's been involved in the project as well. He sent me an email saying that he was out of town and he would call me back the next day, but I have not heard back from Jeff. And I have not heard back from Sherry. We left it that she would talk with Mario and get back to me, that I would have just a sort of preliminary discussion with Peter Nobile from the HDC and just sort of say, so if the library did come to you with a request to change the parking, would you be, would the HDC sort of be able to kind of move it right along so that library's project can move along? And he said that there's not a way to really fast track things, but certainly the HDC would, try to get it on the agenda and so forth. But I guess I was under the impression the designs that we saw were designs that could be built. He said it would cost them about another $55,000 to have whatever design was selected actually drawn for specifications for building. And that doesn't include any additional costs for the parking. So I'm feeling a little pessimistic that we're going to be able to get them to do that. I understand the project's over budget already, but we can certainly press ahead. It has to come from them. Although we have a huge interest in it, we don't have any standing in the project because we don't own the building, we're not doing the construction and so forth. So that's where that is. Let me fill you in on the umbrella and then we can discuss this as a whole. So because that parking is in some ways a little connected to the library project. That's the parking lot on Sudbury Road. So there was a meeting of the engineer and people from the umbrella and some folks from the town about that parking, and which I attended, and they are going to retain the 2 handicap spots that are closest to Sudbury Road, the ones that are there now. And there was 1 handicap spot specified in the parking lot closer to the umbrella. And both the umbrella and I, on behalf of the commission, asked for a second parking spot closer to the umbrella, and that was approved. So, you know, that was kind of a win. So there'll be the 2 parking spots on Sudbury Road and then 2 parking spots close to the umbrella entrance. I think that will help in terms of the umbrella. It doesn't solve on-site parking for the library. So, you know, we can try to press forward. If anybody has any ideas or thoughts or.
Well, thank you, Jean, for initiating that, because when I read about the tree being gone, that was my first thought. Let's try. And if it would help to write a formal letter, and I don't know to whom it should be addressed, but I would be glad to, you know, support that, and you know, I would, you know, suggest that that we do that as a formal motion, that we write a letter to ask them to, you know, reconsider the need for a handicapped space as originally proposed, now that the tree is gone. So that would be my my suggestion.
Meryl, are you making that a formal motion?
Yes, that's a formal motion.
Would you like to word that?
Sure, I'd like to propose that.
I move that.
I move that that the
Commission.
the commission writes a letter to request that the library, you know,
To the HDC.
Corporation, the library corporation.
library corporation
The Library Corporation, okay.
reconsider their previous proposal to provide an additional HP spot now that the sacred, the special tree has been taken down, that the need is still there, and we'd like them to reconsider.
Meryl, I'd like you to say that they reconsider their previous proposal that an
Right.
additional parking spot be built on
Yes,
the
On-site.
driveway.
On site.
yes, that's
Yeah,
on
the
site.
proposal. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All
Yes.
right, Susan.
I'll second that, but then I have a comment as well.
Okay.
I think, Jean, you had mentioned this before, and it kind of relates to the discussion about ComAv, is that if people don't feel safe, they're not going to go to the library.
Right.
And that's part of, I think, part of the message that you could may or may not include in this letter. It's up to, I'm not saying either way, but I think that the
Yeah.
message needs reiteration in some form.
I agree. I think that's.
I agree.
That's a salient point that, to me, in all the discussions we had with the library and the HDC, it never quite sank in that you're spending all this money making it a beautiful, accessible building on the inside, but then people aren't going to use it. Bonnie?
Excuse
Yeah,
me,
I
but I
was just
think we have a
gonna-
motion on the floor.
No,
that hasn't been
it contributes,
seconded.
it contributes to that.
Okay.
So if I need to wait, I can wait, but I think it might relate. I'm
Sure.
wondering if instead of a letter, maybe we try this press release option? Do we want to go kind of more public with this discussion, or, because it's not the town, right? It's the library is a separate entity, so it wouldn't kind of, I don't know, I'd like just to discuss that for a second and hear your thoughts. You've got more experience than me in this, so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'd be happy to, I think that we could give it a try, because we haven't been sending out any sort of press releases, but you know, if someone were willing to simply, you know, I don't know who to send it to, or who,
Well, I've done that research, so I
Mhm.
contacted the person at the town, so we would write it and send it to her, and she would do any tweaks, and then, I mean, she might bounce it back to us and say, this isn't appropriate. But we
right,
were Discussing press releases and becoming more public, so I was just wondering,
Yeah.
this might be an
great
opportunity,
idea.
or too
Great idea.
divisive, maybe it's too divisive
Mhm.
for a first communication, I'm not certain.
I don't see why we should, I perhaps, someone disagrees, but I don't see why in addition to, I think we need to make the formal request, in the form of letter, but I think that a multi-pronged approach makes sense in terms of public awareness, that, the library is proceeding with a beautiful building, but without any on-site parking, and let people become aware.
This feels to me like a sort of, this might be stepping too far, but a classic sort of bait and switch, oh, we can't do it because of the tree. Oh, we had to cut the tree down, so now we can't, but we still can't do it. So,
Right,
um,
it bothers me
that's
too.
the story that, and I think everybody's, experienced some of that with bureaucracy, so it might
Right,
appeal, it might go someplace, but
Yeah.
I'm not,
that'd be great.
Well, and a press release could certainly be, of the ilk. The Commission on Disability has either written to or has asked the library to reopen the parking issue and so forth. I think
Most people don't realize that we've been involved in this question.
Mhm.
I think people are aware, the library is expanding, but I don't think anybody has given it a second thought that there may not be HP parking near
and
there.
they're even advertising it. I mean, I live right near the library, and there are large posters that they have advertising. And one of them, I took a picture, I sent it to Jennifer. It says, and new handicap spots, accessible parking spots.
What?
Yes.
Oh,
it's
Well,
great.
but they have 2 accessible spots. We didn't like them, but they meet the letter of the law.
Right,
And yeah, it's a little over the top, but it's not false. It's just they're not very good accessible spots.
right.
So Meryl has made a motion and it wasn't seconded, so we've discussed it. That
No,
doesn't matter.
Susan seconded it.
Oh, she did?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so then,
Before we move to vote though, I'd like to see if Ned Perry has any comments for us about this.
well, I'd like to have Meryl give the motion, because I've written down various notes here. And then also see, somebody, was it Bonnie? Yeah, Bonnie suggested that we do something else. So I've got two threads going on here. So-
I move that we request that in a letter form that the Commission on Disability write a letter to the Library Corporation requesting them reconsidering their previous plan to provide an on-site handicapped parking spot. Since the previous, I'm not being articulate about it.
I think you're good right there. And
Yeah.
I think Susan's comments about, we could put this also in the letter. I don't think that has to go in the motion. The motion is we write a letter, not what the
Okay.
contents are.
So what do you want the motion to say?
That's
I think
precisely.
Meryl
what-
just said it.
I just said it.
Okay, I move that we, the Commission on Disability, write, to the library board that they can reconsider their previous plan for on-site parkings, on-site handicap parking.
Parking,
Right.
right.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
And would we have a second?
Yeah, Susan seconded it.
Okay. So that's,
So
That's the
before we
official.
vote, I do want to ask Ned Perry if he has any comments or thoughts for us about this.
Jean, I congratulations to you and to the committee, and to the board to follow up. It just seemed to be so obvious that with that tree gone, it was a matter of inches that the library was saying that they couldn't put a parking space in there or a half moon driveway. And not only for your commission, but with the expansion of the youth part of the library in the new addition, there are so many parents who've commented to me and to others about the safety of being able to pull off, stay in the street, stay in the car with one child, watch the other child go to the door and be greeted by a staff member for a particular program. It just seemed to me that this was an opportunity to go back to the library. And thank you very much for all the work that you've done, Jean. And I'm hoping the town staff also will look at this. There is a telephone pole that people have told me that there's a telephone pole that might need to be moved or worked around. But good for the commission for following up. I think the letter is a great idea. And we need to work on these things as communities, as a community. And thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. And thank you for the commission for just following up. With that tree gone, there's a big lawn there now that could be used if the library were to see fit to really be considerate of the youth of the community, the young families, as well as those of us who are a little bit senior. Thank you.
Okay,
Hope that's helpful.
thank you, Ned. Okay, are there other comments or are we ready to vote?
Mhm.
Okay, Janet, would you call people for their
Yeah.
vote on this motion?
I will. Jean Goldsberry,
Aye, yes,
Bonnie Albright,
you're muted, Bonnie.
You calling me?
Yes.
My son just called, sorry. Yes.
Meryl Schwartz,
Yes.
Susan Bates,
Yes.
and me, yes. That's it, right?
That's it.
Yes.
Okay,
Jean, I have to go to another meeting now, but I think there weren't any other voting issues on this agenda. Is that correct?
no,
Okay.
nothing
All right.
else that we need to.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So separate from the, the on-site parking, I just wanted to throw out an idea that occurred to me.
Jane, do we need to adjourn because we don't have a quorum?
We're not going to vote on anything.
I
I'm just
see.
sharing information. Yeah, thank you. Something that occurred to me as after the parking discussion about the Sudbury Road parking lot. One of the issues is that there's no light at that crosswalk and cars go.
You
pretty
just
fast.
lost you, Jean. We just lost you.
Oh,
No, I see her. I can see her in here.
I can
Okay.
now.
okay, good. So we've talked some about and haven't sort of finished the project about needing to put together some procedures around being able to distribute some funds for needed projects. We know they have to be something that benefits everyone. Potentially some kind of light or some kind of alert system for that crosswalk might be something we might want to think about. We've got, I don't know, $5,800 or something. It certainly isn't enough to buy a light, but it might be something we could contribute to. So just a thought.
We, at the Transportation Committee, they have discussed with Steve Duprin from engineering, putting up lights because of traffic studies. And this has never come up, but I would be glad, with some direction to, to throw, or we could informally talk to the town manager about bringing this up at the Transportation Committee. I keep saying committee, and, proposing that we could even direct some funds to some sort of, that warning light system that
Yeah,
I've
like-
seen in other places.
Yeah, something like the crosswalks for the rail trail.
Mhm.
I love that
Right.
idea from the perspective of our donation ideas and scholarship ideas. I mean, maybe we have our own ideas that we want to put the money behind and not look externally.
True.
That's true.
But I got hit by a car, right? Not on
Oh.
that crosswalk, but the next one over going from the library. I mean, I definitely think it's a dangerous dark spot too. The shadows are encroaching.
Okay, so it's an idea. We could certainly talk about it more at our next meeting, where hopefully we'll have more of our members.
Mhm.
I want to fill you in on just one more thing and then probably end the meeting for tonight. So we will not have gotten to any of our old business. But that's the Junction Village traffic. Not car traffic so much as bike and skateboard and whatever else, hoverboard traffic. There's a group of citizens, mostly from West Concord, who are concerned about all of the wheeled devices going through Junction Village, right there with the Concord, it's not Concord Green, Concord something, the housing, the
Junction Park.
Junction Park, okay.
Mhm.
So there's a meeting next Tuesday, I think it is. Let me look, I'm gonna attend that.
Is that in person or?
It is in person.
And I could go if you could tell me where and when.
Sure, well, it's right at Junction Park.
Okay.
I'll get that to you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's not, sometimes my Outlook on my computer doesn't always connect with my phone perfectly, but I'll find that and get it to you.
Great.
And you all saw the design, I sent that out, the design for a stencil to be painted that asks people to get off their bikes or get off their skateboards, whatever. And Mary Beth did send me some thoughts about it, and we had a conversation about it, that it's way not perfect, but it probably solves some of it. It's a little bit ableist in nature, but it does at least get the message across to people who are, riding bikes through there or on skateboards. So I think that may be part of that discussion next week as well.
Great.
So that's where things are in terms of Junction Village. So I don't know that we can even have a vote to end the meeting, but we can vote with our feet.
Well, I want to bring up one, if I can do this in one, I mentioned this to Jean
Oh,
earlier.
I'm sorry, you did.
That's
About
okay.
Parking.
This can be a 3-minute discussion. I lost my temper yesterday at 54 Baker Avenue over the following. The van parking, there's, what are the regulations about parking for vans? They have the striped things, van parking.
Yes,
I park there all the time because there are never any vans in there. And if there was a van, how do they open the door to let the wheelchairs out if there's a car in the next slot? So I got into an argument with two people yesterday over my pulling into one of those spots. And they said, no, that's not for you, that's for handicapped people or something. So, and I kind of got my dander up. Then I thought I should really sort of be more sure what ground I'm on. I think they have too many of those van spots. I have never seen a van in one. The vans pull up to the front door and let the people out. There never is a van in that spot. And they're taking up about 4 or 5 places that could be handicap spots. And I
No.
wonder what the regulation is for the width of a van. Are these van spots wider than handicap spots? Are they wider than a normal?
They are. It's,
They are,
it's
so
the,
that
it's the width of that access area, that striped area. They are a larger space when you look at both the spot and the striped area. My understanding, and Jennifer would certainly be the expert on it, but my understanding is that handicap parking can be used by anyone with a handicap plate or placard.
Well, this was a
And,
van spot.
well, yeah, I know, but
Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
a van parking spot that is handicap accessible is available to anyone who has a placard or a plate.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's designated for vans because they need a little more space. And the ADA does designate how many accessible spots you need per number of total parking spots and how many van accessible ones you need.
So they can't, but a handicapped person with a handicap suit can park in a van spot.
Absolutely.
I gotta go.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Okay,
Go to
all
your-
right.
I have to
bye-bye.
go too.
Sorry
Okay.
to hold everybody so late.
Okay,
tonight.
bye. Thank
See you
you.
next
Okay,
month.
all right. See you
Bye.
next month.
Jean, you're gonna send me the minutes that have to be rewritten from two
I'll
months
dig
ago.
them up.
Yeah. dig 'em up.
Okay. All right. Have a good
Okay.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.